All right, we'll just
Oh, I'm sorry.
we'll wait to get some people to join, and then we'll start. So we'll just kind of give them a minute. All right. I guess we'll go ahead and get started here. So just, kind of, I guess, tell everybody about yourself, or, you obviously, I know you're running for judge or court of appeals. And, I just kind of feel like, you could probably best explain your background or why you're running for the court of appeals, things like that. So if you just want to tell everybody what, who you are and what you're doing and why you're seeking office.
Sure. Thanks. First off, David, thanks for taking the time and setting this up. So, you and I could have a chat, and I guess everybody else could watch us talk. They don't get to talk to us, but they get to watch us talk, right? Yeah. So I'm Jeff Carpenter. I am a Superior Court judge in Union County. I'm running for seat number 7 in the North Carolina Court of Appeals. How do I get here? That's the question everybody wants to know, right? They want to know your background. I grew up the son of an electrician and plumber. My mom was an administrative assistant. So I'm a blue collar guy. I grew up pulling wire, fitting pipe, and went to the public schools in Anson County. It's a rural county, pretty economically depressed. It's Title I county. Went to the public schools there, graduated from Anson Senior High School, received my Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And then I went to the North Carolina State Highway Patrol Basic School, and I was a trooper for 6 years. Learned a lot on the road as a trooper, made a lot of good friends, learned a lot about people and how to treat folks with dignity and respect. A lot of folks don't realize that troopers, at least at the time when I was there, when you are dealing with folks on the side of the road, there's no backup. We didn't call in stops. Nobody knew where we were or what we were doing. So you treated folks with dignity and respect to try to do your job and not get yourself in a tight spot. So I learned a lot about how to treat people when I was a trooper, and I've carried that over as a judge, and I'll tell you a little bit about that shortly. So after I'd been on the Highway Patrol for 6 years, I left and went back to law school at Campbell University. I received my law degree from Campbell when it was still in Bowie's Creek, and upon completing law school and passing the bar, went back to Anson County and practiced in the old Judicial District 20, which was Anson, Richmond, and Stanley County, a 4-county district. Anson was in the middle, so that's where the office was. So I rotated around those 4 counties practicing law. And after practicing law for 13 years, Judge Lee here in Union County let us know that he was going to be retiring. And funny story, the elected clerk in Union County is a former trooper, and the elected sheriff in Union County is a former trooper. And I got a call from those guys that says, "Hey, Judge Lee's thinking about retiring. You got any interest in being a Superior Court judge?" And hadn't really thought about it. It wasn't anything that I set out to do. I hadn't really thought about becoming a judge at any point. Turns out, Lord's got a plan, and here I am. I was appointed by Pat McCrory to fill the remainder of the term up until the next election cycle, which I was appointed in June. I was elected in November of 2016. And I've been Superior Court judge here in Union County since. And Superior Court is the highest level trial court in North Carolina. Court of Appeals is a court of review. And what we do there is review the decisions and applications of the law from the trial courts. Unique in my background, potentially moving to the Court of Appeals, is there are not many folks on the Court of Appeals that have significant trial experience in the trial courts. And that seems odd given that all the cases that end up in the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court start in a trial court somewhere. So that's a skill set I bring to the table that I think is lacking right now.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point and there's far and few between as many cases that are heard on appeal as it is to the Supreme Court. And a lot of people don't realize that the Supreme Court has an option of whether they take the case or not. So the Court of Appeals, while they still have like some leeway there, they still stop most of the cases at the Court of Appeals, and it never goes to the Supreme Court. So that's just how important the Court of Appeals is. And I just wanted, you on here, especially you being prior law enforcement, me being law enforcement myself. I know that, coming from kind of the same cloth, so to speak, it's very important that we have people in elected positions, in my opinion, that have been out on the road, that have, answered call for service, that have actually served the public. And, you had a career of doing that, and you're continuing that by being a judge. And I think that's just excellent. But, to the point of the Court of Appeals, a lot of the issues I see is we're not paying attention to those seats as conservatives. We're not making sure that we have conservative judges. And I feel that's very important and overlooked in our elections. And right now, with everything that we see that's going on, I feel that it's one of the most important things that we need to focus on and make sure we have good conservative judges in the appeals and in the Supreme Court. So, that's one of the other reasons why I wanted you on here is because, I feel like you're more of a conservative. I know and two, just for people that's listening, if I say something or ask him a certain question, he may not be allowed to comment. So it could just be me just saying something that I'm not all familiar with the rules, but I just know that he can only answer certain things. So it's not like he's being a politician. So he just can't answer because he's legally obligated or he's legally bound not to. So, and with that being said as well, what would you kind of going with the conservative piece? What would you say is your judicial philosophy as far as like the Constitution or things like that?
That's an important question, David. Let me tell you why. The reason that is such an important question is because conservative is a subjective term. It means different things to different people. So it's a good question to ask. Okay, you say you're conservative. Tell me about your judicial philosophy. It's a great point to make, and I'm not bashful about it. I'll tell you exactly how I see things. If I'm nothing else, I'm genuine and authentic, and I don't hide the ball from you. So my philosophy is, I consider myself a conservative, but my philosophy is the law says what it says and means what it says. Importantly, it doesn't mean what it doesn't say. That's where we get ourselves into trouble, is when we start saying, well, the law doesn't say that, but this is what it means. If judges get to the point to where we're doing that, we're basically supplanting the legislature. The legislature says what the law says. We apply the law as they say that it is. Certainly there's opportunities or times when there are unconstitutional things that are passed. But again, that's another one of those, you don't make a constitutional issue where none exist. If the law is clear, there's not a lot of ground. You just apply the law as it's written. And I'm a originalist on the Constitution. I think you look at the Constitution from the perspective of what it says, taking into consideration the time in which it was enacted. And that's true in both the state and federal application. But a lot of folks don't know that our federal Constitution was enacted was ratified some 245 years ago, something like that. The state Constitution was last enacted and ratified in 1971. It's basically the same document that it was in the late 1800s, 1886, I think, was when we enacted it, ratified it first. It's basically the same documents, but it's been tweaked. So you need to look at it from the perspective of what was going on in the minds of the people who ratified that document in 1971. Because what you'll hear from time to time in court is, well, this is an antiquated document. People in 1886 didn't consider this, that, and the other, which may very well be true. But how about the folks in 1971? Did they consider it? And that's sort of the position I take on the law. That's kind of my judicial philosophy. It's not the judge's job to make the law. The judge's job is to apply the law.
Yes, and I don't know how much as far as you can elaborate, but I can say anything pretty much. But I think a lot of people are frustrated. I know I am when you see the term of legislating from the bench, so to speak, or you see where we'll vote for something as a North Carolinians that is somewhat it'll be an amendment to the Constitution or something that's overwhelmingly supported. And it'll all of a sudden be held up in court and ruled as unconstitutional by superior court judges. And it's non-biased. It's not okay. Well, it's just kind of odd to me when I look at the constitutionality of it, and I don't see an issue. Or a lot of and I agree with equal rights and things like that for people, and I just feel like, whenever you try to do things, it needs to go through the legislature. You need to work. That's what it's there for. You're supposed to have those discussions by your people that you elect to represent you. And if they're not doing that, then why are they in office? So, that's the whole point of, we need to stop having activist judges or ones that are trying to use ambiguity to their own ends. And I just think that we need to get back to our roots. And like you said, you decide on whether it's constitutional or not. You decide on the law. You're not there to create law. If you're helping.
The problem with judges, some folks understand, some folks don't. There is what they call making the legislative sausage. It's a cliche that my friends that I've had that served in the legislatures, whether it be in the House or the Senate, talk about making the legislative sausage. So bills go through a vetting process, and they're tweaked and modified after they're read 3 times in the House, and they have opportunities to make amendments and what have you. Then if it passes the House, it goes over to the Senate and goes through the same process. So by the time it gets to the governor's desk, it's been well vetted from beginning to end. Excuse me. If a judge makes the law, there's no vetting. There's no vetting of that. And another important issue in regards to how the law is made is, if the legislature makes it and we don't like it or they don't like it, we elect a new legislature every 2 years. We can start over from scratch every 2 years by electing 100% of our legislature every 2 years. So if they don't like what we did, or the people don't like what the legislature did, they can elect new legislators, and they can change that the next cycle, next session that they're in. Once a judge makes some law from the bench, it's in the jurisprudence of the state, and it's tough to change that based on the principles of judicial application. Stare decisis is the Latin term. It's tough to change that. Once it's there, and you're basically to the position to where you're having to kind of trying to force a square peg into a round hole sometimes. And a lot of the cases where there's what I consider judicial legislation, it's emotional cases where the emotion and the facts of the case are driving the outcome. And the law should be unemotional, because if it's not unemotional, you can't guarantee that it gets applied to everyone the same way every time. If you apply it on emotion, then this fact may be different than that fact, and then the emotions drive a different outcome, although the facts are basically the same. Or you may be dealing with a preacher or a child in one case, and the court decides, well, that child needs to be looked after, so we need to tweak the law to give them a benefit, versus just an average person that of working age in another case. Well, they don't deserve the benefit of tweaking the law. But once it's in the jurisprudence, it's there. And it legislating from the bench creates, in my opinion, an opportunity to upset the stability of the judicial branch, and it makes the courts unpredictable, and that's a dangerous proposition. Lawyers ought to know, they ought to have a good feel for what the law is and how it's going to be applied to their case before they ever set foot into the courtroom.
Yeah, and you make a good point of, in the legislature, you have attorneys that are crafting these bills and arguing the bills for the most part. I wouldn't say everybody is, but they have attorneys that look over the laws before they're enacted. So you're having multiple attorneys already scan through these documents, review these documents, and they're put out. Typically, they're pretty sound for the most part. It's just when you get these situations where acting on emotion, almost like mob rule, where they don't like it or they don't think it's fair or what have you, they go through the judicial branch to get it thrown out by select judges that they elected themselves. So, because if you look at where most of these arguments are done, or I don't know if that's just, maybe it's a coincidence or it has to be done there, but I've known where most of the cases are thrown out are in Wake County or, pretty much, Wake County. So, and I don't know if that's just because the legislature is here, why they select that area, but that jurisdiction, but maybe
there's actually a statute that requires any actions filed against the legislature to be filed in Wake County because it's the state capital.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So I just make sure I haven't reviewed that, so I don't want to, it just makes, common sense there. But like another thing, speaking on emotions, that kind of leads into this other part I wanted to talk about is you see now a lot of civil unrest, a lot of people going off emotion, a lot of things trying to get passed, and a lot of people like defunding the police. You have people out there rioting. You have people, committing violence, stealing, looting, all in the name of social justice when they're actually hurting, people of color that are business owners in that community. They're doing all kinds of hateful violence against other people because of their race. And that's what they're trying to fight against. And I just kind of see like this whole issue here. And it's kind of like people are playing into that. People are using political motive to go after our police as kind of like a scapegoat, in my opinion. But can there be true reform? Yes, absolutely. There can be reform in anything. But I feel like a lot of people are just doing this off of staying in power or obtaining power, or like you said, it's just based off emotion. They may believe it themselves. So what is your opinion? And if you can speak to that, I understand if you cannot, but what is your opinion on that situation? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but what is your whole opinion on that?
Well, I can't really give you an opinion because some of those matters may come before the court, whether it be Superior Court or Court of Appeals. But I will I'll give you this piece of logic, if you will. When you most emotional decisions are made quickly. They're quick and they're heat of the moment decisions. Many of those emotional decisions, if you thought them out to their natural conclusion before you made those emotional decisions, you may well likely say, that might not be the best idea. If you think them out to their natural conclusion, if the point is, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. Because once you get it, it's hard to go back to what you had before, and you may not be able to go back there at all. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, I try to. I know I probably kind of pushed it a little bit, but like I said, I know you guys are restricted, but I could say it. but yeah, it's just sad times. You would think that that I've never experienced like a year like 2020 where, of course, it's when you have all this very pivotal election that all the world is coming to an end, and I'm sure after this election cycle you'll probably see it calm down for another couple of years. But
and there have been times look, the First Amendment is incredibly important. The right to free speech, the right to protest and petition their government is incredibly, it's foundational to a civil society. So let me say that at the outset. But you can see oftentimes on the video that gets played on the news, what have you, where bad things happen during these episodes. And the first thing they do is call 911. Who comes? So again, be careful what you wish for, you might get it.
Yeah, and you see that often playing out. You know, I've put a lot of videos up, and it's, you know, just to kind of show that of, you see them walking around with guns, and somebody, you know, they'll be yelling against the police, and then somebody will get shot, and the police aren't going to come because they're being defunded, or they're obviously answering other calls for service. They're bogged down. There's looting and rioting going on, and then the ambulances won't come to respond to help the person that was shot, the victim, because they're not going to go in there. It's not safe unless police come, as you know, come in there and make the area safe. So here you are having people falling victim to this that are just, you know, and I agree. Like the First Amendment, I genuinely believe there are people there that genuinely want change. They're there for the right reasons. I think it's just a small few that are causing this chaos. And it's unfortunate, but the stuff that they are pushing for, the ideology, like kind of what I guess what I'm saying is if you get rid of the police because you think that they're the evil ones and all that, well, now look what happened. You have cities burning to the ground. You have people losing their livelihoods, and you have people getting shot in the streets, and you're calling for the police, and guess what? They're not coming. So, and it's just a shame because you have people like, as you know, because you were a trooper, we put our lives on the line for people we don't even know. We'll probably never see again. And, you know, we have to listen to, you know, and we'll even protect the very people that are speaking out against us, saying they want to defund us and saying that they hate us and we're murderers, and we're protecting their right to do that. And that's my point as well. As sheriff, I would protect somebody's right to do that. Even if I completely disagree, or if they say, you know, down with the police, as long as they're not violent, I'll protect their right to do that because I believe in the Constitution and the First Amendment. However, once it turns violent or you see this radicalization, things like that, you have to stop it as soon as it starts to turn that way, because you cannot allow violence or destruction of properties.
Yeah, you know, David, when I transitioned from being a trooper to a lawyer, a lot of folks that I knew that were friends of mine would ask, well, how do you go from being a trooper to being a lawyer? I mean, how do you even do that? How do you sleep at night? I said, well, you know, being a trooper and being a lawyer aren't all that different. And they'd look at me kind of funny. And, what do you mean by that? I said, well, nobody wants to see a trooper or a lawyer until they need one.
Yeah. And I've entered that realm as well, you know, transitioning from, I mean, I'm still in law enforcement now, but I'm transitioning to become a lawyer as well. And, you know, people are always calling you up. People you haven't talked to in years, trying to get legal advice from you. And it's like, look, I can't do that. You know, sorry, I need to be licensed first, or, you know, you still got to pay me, even though I know, you know, just, you know, joking, but in the future, of course. But a lot of people that are cops, I feel like my mindset has changed a lot because I know the Constitution. I know the legalities of intent as opposed to before, you know, so you just look at things differently, but at the same set, you can't get the cop out of you. You cannot get that type of mindset out because you've done it and it's just who you are. But I think I as a lawyer, well, you know, soon to be licensed, that it changes how you view things, though, at least a little bit.
Yeah, well, look, it's all part of our experience is our foundation, right? So all those experiences that we have in our past shape how we view things. As a law enforcement officer, I view things a certain way. I think that becoming a lawyer and especially being a in the trenches trial attorney, having to think through cases and what have you, sort of broaden my perspective on how I saw things. Because if you're going to be good at trying cases, you can't just prepare your case. You have to prepare the other side's case as well, so you have a counter argument to the argument that they make. So it broadens your objectivity as to the facts as a whole. If you get to the point to where And I think that lends itself well to being a judge, because as a judge, I don't have a team. I'm just up there calling balls and strikes. It should not matter to the judge who wins or who loses. It should only matter to the judge that the law is applied the same and consistently to everyone who's there. It doesn't matter who it is or what their socioeconomic background is. The law should be applied the same. So, that's where, in my opinion, the good judges remove the emotional side and just say the law's pretty fixed. It applies this way, and it applies this way to everyone. And I think that's the makings of the good judge. Judges that make emotional decisions create work for the Court of Appeals.
You answered that spot on, because too, and I think coming from a law enforcement background, I know, or at least, from my point of view, it doesn't matter if you're, and especially I know troopers and writing tickets now, so I'm gonna pick on y'all a little bit, but it doesn't matter if you're 16 or 60. If you're going 120 miles per hour down the highway, you're probably getting a ticket. You know what I mean? So it's just the law is the law at some point, and it's in that situation, it's for you're actually reminding them that it's not safe to do that. They're not only risking their own life, they're risking others as well. So.
Yeah, and my court, when I say my court, I mean the court that I serve on. The Superior Court is a little different than the District Court, which is also a trial level court, and it's different than the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals is much better situated to have an unemotional application of the law than in the trial courts. And the District Court is more susceptible to emotion becoming part of the equation than in the Superior Court. In the Superior Court, the law gets applied the same to everyone. And there's really no discretion in much of that, except for a few sections of the rules of evidence. There's some discretion in, for example, this will be Chinese to folks that don't know the rules of evidence. Rule 401, whether something is relevant, it has a definition. That's a matter of law. Once you get to Rule 403, on the balancing test, then that's where the judge's discretion comes in, whether it's more prejudicial than probative and whether or not it ought to come in so as not to unduly influence the outcome of a particular trial. So that's where the discretion comes in the trial setting, but there's not many places for that to happen during the trial. The discretion is applied at the disposition stage. And, for example, in the criminal setting, the legislature has enacted and passed structured sentencing. So we have a scale where we consider what class offense it is and what prior record level they are. And then we have a range that we can sentence within that range. And the facts ought to dictate where you come in on that range. Facts of the case, the extraordinary circumstances that may be outside of what you normally consider in the evidence. But in the Superior Court, the jury makes the ultimate decision as to guilt or innocence. That's not the judge's job in the court where I serve.
Absolutely. And I know, you got stuff going on. I appreciate you taking the time to come out here, but I know you have meetings and everything's like that. You're campaigning. We're in the heat. We're close to election. And I just want people to realize too, because judges, a lot of people vote for president, Senate, Congress. All right, I'm done. No, you need to, and somebody brought this up in a previous discussion. They said, make sure you flip over your ballot if you want change, because that's where a lot of the judges are. And make sure you know who you're voting for and make sure you get that in there, because this election is very important. And as most people don't realize, our upper courts are majority Democrat. Now there's partisan or majority Democrat. So that's why I think it's very important that we definitely take a look at that this year, because it is so important.
I think in Wake County, you guys are going to have a 3-page ballot front and back. I mean, it's immense.
I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't pulled my sample ballot yet, but I would not be surprised. I'm sure it is. I mean, it's a full thing going.
So a couple couple things I want to touch on that you raised, David. First off, you mentioned that there will be party denominations. That's true. Legislature passed that. All the races on the statewide judicial races and your local judicial races that have traditionally been nonpartisan, this election cycle will have the party denomination at the end of the name, either the R or the D. And another thing that's incredibly important is that it doesn't matter how the legislature is constituted if the courts won't apply the law as they enact it. And that's why you need independent courts. If your career has been as an appointee of the governor and you're called upon to make a decision as to whether the governor wins or someone else wins, I mean, where's the independence there, right?
Yeah, and I know the legislature tried, doing something with that, but that's for another discussion. But yeah, I know that it's, if you're beholden to somebody, or two, if you look at just their donations that they get, if you look at some of the donations, I'm not going to say names on some of these judges in the upper tiers, they have hundreds, they have a lot of money coming in from
out of state.
Yeah, exactly. Why would somebody invest in that? Why would they do that?
Well, I have a theory on that, and I've already mentioned that if your courts won't apply the law as it's enacted, it doesn't matter how the legislature is made up. David, thank you so much for having me join your friends. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for introducing me to your friends. And as a parting gift, I'll tell you a little bit about how they can find out more about me. I've got a website. It's electjeffcarpenter.com, or you can Google Judge Jeff Carpenter. It'll take you right there. And there's an email on there. I answer my own emails. I try to be transparent and available. As David, as you well know, if you call me, I'm the one that calls you back. I may not answer your call, but if you call me and leave me a message, I'm the one that calls you back. So I'd encourage your folks to educate themselves on who's on the ballot. A voter that's informed is the best voter of all.
Yeah, and thanks again for doing that. And I'll provide your information in the chat so that way people that watch it later can check you out. And I encourage everybody to go check you out, donate, do everything they can, and especially vote, because this is a very important election for our judges. So, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Okay, in politics, money is the mother's milk of politics. But in addition to money, what you can do, what your friends can do to help further what you and I have discussed here tonight is share with your friends, hey, I watched this video on these judges, and here's based on what I've learned or how I've educated myself, this is who I'd recommend to you. And there's 8 statewide judicial races this time, 3 for the Supreme Court. Regardless of the outcome of this, if Republicans sweep the election this time, it'll be a 4-3 makeup, 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans. The North Carolina Court of Appeals is currently held by a majority of Democrats. If the Republicans sweep in the Court of Appeals, there will be a Republican majority this time. There's only one incumbent on the ballot. So got lots of choices. You just got to finish the ballot.
Yes, very important this cycle. Very, very important. Please fill it in. and at least, I'm not saying just vote for whoever. I mean, honestly, research it and vote accordingly. So, but thank you for your time, and I wish you the best on your campaigns.
Thank you, David. I hope sooner rather than later, you and I will be looking each other in the eye in the same room.
All right, sounds good. It sounds good. I look forward to it. I'll see you.